Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have a surprise for you, which means it is not the 10 ox herding pictures, but a very similar picture, which I recently found. It's called The 9 Stages of Mental Development. And it is from the Indian, Nepalese, Tibetan culture. And it has slightly different symbology, and it has slightly different beginning and end. But the process, although in the details it's also different, is very much the same as the 10 ox herding pictures. This is not so common, In our Mahayana world, you don't see that many times. And the reason why I'm presenting this right here, right now, is to let you know that other cultures also have this. It's not the property of the Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Mahayana Zen. And we also see some differences, how they imagine the progress. Here you find a temple-like house, okay? It's a normal house, but it already has some different establishment than an average living space. Nonetheless, there's a garden, and from this garden, the person starts out. Here you see some fire. Here's the person, running in kind of monk's type of clothing or practicing clothing, running after the black elephant, which is chasing an interesting figure. It's also black. It's walking on 2 legs. Looks like a monkey or a human being. We'll find out very soon. So this is kind of analog with seeing the footsteps. But already the black elephant appears, and it's definitely an elephant. It's black. There's fire, which is in its footsteps behind it. And there's a monkey before it, also black, chasing. Note the snow lion. It's looking away, looking at a tree. Okay, we'll come back to that later. So as the road turns, the black lion, here's our practitioner, again in kind of yogi-style clothing, holding a rope. It's right here, holding a rope in his hand. And it's chasing the black elephant. The black elephant, in turn, is chasing this, let's say, black monkey. Now, there's also some fire. This is the second stage. But nobody is going into that. The road is actually clear. On the left, it's possible to go into the fire. On the right, it's possible to go into the river. This is a river and a lake. Does this look familiar? It's like the second picture when the rope is around the neck of the ox, and it's possible to go into the marshland, into the yin, and also to be either in the ravine or against the mountain, which is the yang. So far, pretty similar. Okay? As we go on, there's a rope. See, that's very thin, but there's a rope around the elephant's neck. Our practitioner is pulling it, and the head of the elephant is already white. And that should look familiar to all of us, because if you were here the previous 2 times, you saw that the first thing that gets white in the ox is the head. And then later on, we can also see that here, the head of this monkey-like bad karma figure is also getting white. All right? So next stage in the development is that the first 2 feet, 2 legs of the elephant, besides the head, they're getting white, and so does the monkey. The 2 hands and the head are also becoming more clear. So that should look also familiar, as we have also seen the presentation before, and we could also see the same thing happening to the ox itself. Now, what is becoming interesting is that here now there's a shift. The next thing we see is that the practitioner is now in front. It's no longer behind. Here it was behind. Now it's in front, pulling the elephant, and then behind the elephant there is the half-white monkey. Okay? That's an important part when it's not your karma which pulls you around so much, but it's you who try to pull your karma, ahead on the road. It's still not 100% clear, but it's already there. And then there is a praying movement. Almost entirely the elephant is white, so is the monkey. And now there is no longer tension. Here there is still tension. Look at it. Here there is no tension. Remember when in the 10 ox herding pictures, the rope is loose. And the rope is just hanging around the neck of the ox, if you follow me with the previous Dharma talk. And here, it's completely white. The prayer relaxes into meditation. This is a meditating figure. You can see the two hands together. Right? Look at it. And then the next thing you know, that there's another, even more interesting relationship. The practitioner is here, seemingly just offering something or not doing anything particular, and the elephant is standing there. And then they enter this house or hermitage or the house of the Buddha. Here is where the earth realm ends, or the realm of becoming ends in this picture. And then from here is the heavenly road. It's the heavenly road up to either aspect of Kwansambosa Bodhisattva. Since it's from the Indian, Nepalese, Tibetan culture, we assume it's a white Tara, right on, in the top left corner for us. And it's a green Tara in the top right corner, whereas Buddha is sitting right in the middle. Okay? And then the practitioner is sitting right up on top of the elephant, and there's another elephant with the Buddha or Bodhisattva coming down to greet him. Look at this. One issuing down from this realm, and another one issuing up, disappearing here from this realm. And that's when they meet, and supposedly they shake hands and they go up to this place. Now, all of you who have been here can follow what kind of stages we have. And here the monkey actually personifies your bad karma, your bad human karma. And your wisdom aspect, the elephant, the wisdom mind, the Buddha nature is covered with that bad karma. And to my mind, a little bit superfluously, it's added on the road. It's a little bit personified. Why so? Because here, when the shift occurs, this is actually more important than this. When the shift occurs, your karma stops controlling you. Your wisdom is like this half-baked kind of wisdom. Turns around, and then your karma is actually not as strong as your Dharma or your practice anymore. And then with this kind of order, you are going forward, praying, meditating, or teaching, or even offering. This gesture is not clear what this person is doing there. But one thing is absolutely clear, that once he reaches this stage, there is moving up. And between this realm, or suppose this realm, and this house, there is no visible connection. Remember the 11th picture which was present. There is a link between the last and the first stage. When people attain complete awakening, when people become absolutely free from their karma, they start to help other people. And that's why the 10th picture is the old master appearing near the city or entering the marketplace. This is the last stage, and that's when the teaching appears. That's when teaching happens. Now, between this and this, there is no visible connection. And that is a kind of representative of two different aspects of the mind, which is returning as a bodhisattva or staying in the Buddha realm and not returning. Here you can see a little bit more of the Theravada approach, which doesn't have an explicit bodhisattva ideal, although socially, practically, from a Buddhist point of view, Hinayana or Theravada countries, they help a lot of people too. So there is no difference because of the tradition or because of the form. But this one here does not make a cycle or a circle. Here, from here, it's a linear succession up to the Buddha realm, and that's where it stops. And although there's a lot of curves here, it's just a graphic point of view, a graphic reasoning. This is a linear sequence. There is no circular or cyclic sequence here. And that's a very important point, because our vow, our great vow, is that we return until the last sentient being has been liberated. Okay? And the Shibudo, or the 10 ox herding pictures, with the extension that I showed before, or even without it, provides that cyclical view, which corresponds also with the existence of the universe as it is, with the existence of human beings as we are. And this one is not better or worse, it simply represents a choice. At this point, you have a choice. Below this, not so much of a choice. Okay? At this point, the choices are already abundant. And at this point, there is a choice. Return here and start to instruct this person. Otherwise, how would he know where to go and what to do? There is no teacher here. Okay? Or stay up there. So here, the vow of the Bodhisattva is a supremely important factor. Life after life, the Bodhisattva vows to incarnate in worlds where are sentient beings, help them attain liberation, and when the last one has been liberated, then attain nirvana. This one here. Okay? So much about the 9 stages of mental development in a nutshell. Please turn on the lights back up again. And deliberately, today's introduction has been shorter, because this is our last opportunity to meet for more than half a year. And if you have any questions related to practice, then please feel free to ask. It's all right to stay there. It's fine. So again, if you have any questions related to practice, or the previous Dharma talks, or even this one with a relationship to the previous Shibudo interpretation, either as individual practice, remember the first, or a group practice, remember the second, feel free to ask.
Sometimes I feel that Chong An is very fiercing.
Filthy?
It often appears Korean poetry. It appears open Korean poetry. Answer about Chong An?
No.
Is it, I suppose, good answer is a mental telepathy about obedience?
No.
No.
Your thinking about Chong An is not good or not bad, but it's like trying to use a stick to hit the moon. The stick will never hit the moon. So really, if you're interested in Chong An, it's because they are piercing. That's true, because they really cut through all your thinking, and they're burning. They're burning with dissatisfaction and sometimes frustration that you don't know the answer, or you cannot do anything with it, you know. Then a little Chong An practice is advisable. And don't do that just in your own head. Your own thinking cannot solve the Chong An. That's why the Chong Ans are so good. Okay? You go and you search a teacher with whom you have some good inyon, you feel that. And based on that, you can do Son Muntap, or Dharma combat. You learn the basics, and then you do it live. It's a big difference. If you just think about Chong An, it's like playing a video game, okay? But when you do actually Dharma combat, it's like entering a dojo for practicing martial arts with a real opponent. Now, that's a big difference, right? To actually give you an image how it really works, let us compare a little bit the tools, the mind tools of East and West. And for that, I'll use this chalkboard. And I will give you very, very rudimentary but simple, understandable comparison of Eastern and Western mindset. That's for the last 2,000, 2,500 years, just the basic points, okay? So here we have an Eastern side, and here we have a Western side. So we really need to look at the great people of the last 2,500 years, what they did and what they taught. So we have, on the east, in order of appearance, Lao Tzu, and the result was Do Kyo, or Taoism. Next one in line was, let's say, the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and the result was Bul Kyo, okay, Buddhism. And let's say next one in line was Confucius. That was Yu Kyo. All right? Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, they are very, very much the critical mass of Asian culture, the very solid foundation on which Asia and Asian culture is built. And of course, let's forget our Hindu brothers and sisters in the Hindustani peninsula, of which we saw a little sample. But it doesn't really come into the picture directly. But of course, we don't want to leave them out. Otherwise, over 1 billion people would be seriously offended, and we don't want them. Now, what did they actually do here? He taught Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism. Confucianism is really about society, relationships, how we manage our everyday lives, etc., etc. And these two individuals, they were creating spiritual lineages where we learned to train our minds with internal practice. Okay? Practicing inside. So you're practicing here, developed, firstly, intuition, wisdom, compassion, and internal strength. Internal strength, which means in any kind of outside condition, your center doesn't move. You don't budge. You don't divert. You go straight. Okay? And the Oriental or Eastern view had the cyclical phenomenon as the foundation of the universe. So here we heard about reincarnation based on them, based on the Hindu worldview. With Confucianism, we know about the succession of various generations, and we also know that they come back together. And the Great Way has many, many kinds of teachings which are no longer active or no longer public, but they also had a notion of rebirth very clearly. So the Oriental culture, they developed this. And one of the prime kind of assets of training your intuition, wisdom, compassion, and internal strength, one of the prime tools is the Chong An. The Chong An, because you cannot solve the Chong An with thinking. You have to have strong intuition. You cannot solve the Chong An just by thinking. You have to have some wisdom. And if you don't have enough compassion, then in certain cases, certain situations, you cannot solve the questions. Okay? And to stay on the path and really work with the Chong Ans, clear your karma, return to the clear mind, that requires a lot of internal strength. So the development line, although it's not linear and not step by step and not logical, we don't know how it works, but over practicing, you develop these qualities and you answer the Chong Ans. Okay? So remember that, the whole thing, as I clear the process off, to give way to the Western view, we just learn this keyword again, Chong An, up here. So what happened to the West? The West had very interestingly also three important figures. Okay? Let's start with somebody based on whom much of the Old Testament was created. And of course he had companions and followers and later prophets. But who brought monotheistic religion to the outside world from Egypt? His name was Moses. Without Moses, we would not have Christianity, we would not have Judaism, of course, and we would not have any kind of monotheistic religion in the Western world, because it was him who led the Jewish tribes out of Egypt and established a spirituality and later on religion independent of Egypt. Okay? It's a very important point. I'm not giving you the whole lineup, otherwise we would be sitting here until tomorrow and still we would be missing some details. This talk is not about details, it's about major trends and tendencies. So Moses, he created the first real hardcore monotheistic religion outside Egypt. Okay? In Egypt it didn't last long. Let's talk about his mentor or inspirer, an old pharaoh called Akhenaton. And he created the Aton or Aten religion, which only concerned itself about the sun. No longer the duality of the sun and the night, or Seth and Osiris. Only one god, the sun god. That was it. But the priests, of course, didn't like it. He died a very suspicious death. And then later on, the polytheistic and more balanced dualistic nature of Egyptian religion was re-established. However, there was him, Moses, who took the whole thing out of Egypt and really started something on his own. He reformed spiritually and religiously the Jewish tribes. And that's him on whom Judaism is based, and then of course later prophets and kings and all the whole lineup. Then, following in line, mostly who did what we know as the New Testament was Jesus. And then 600 years after him, who created the third largest and now probably even more populous monotheistic religion was Muhammad. Three individuals, but they don't talk about Suheng Pambop too much. They don't talk about internal practice too much. They talk about believing in somebody up there or something up there. So the East concerns itself with an internalized path, something like a path inside of you. Here there's a path outside, a road to heaven or hell. Okay? Remember the difference between the 10 ox herding pictures and the 9 stages of mental development. You can see in a nutshell the difference between ascending to heaven or returning to earth. Okay? Returning to earth is based on this internal mind practice, and although the other one is also having a strong mind element, it really ends up there. It's finished. So it's much like this. Okay? But here, only belief, only believing, following rituals, etc., etc., and then it becomes your salvation, not enlightenment, but salvation. Remember that because we'll have more parallel concepts later. So this created a set of monotheistic religions, and soon after the fall of the Roman Empire, 476 AD, we had something really terrible happening. And that was what we call the Dark Ages. It happened in Europe. It lasted nearly 1,000 years. Some people say 600, some people say 800. But the real renaissance, the real enlightenment, the real shift in consciousness started with Galileo Galilei in 1600s and onwards. Okay? 100 years before him, Giordano Bruno was still burnt because of his research, because of his findings. Galilei was not. He could live. Okay? Why is this so important? In 476 AD, the line of cause and effect relationship between man and the universe was totally defined by the church. So there was a big organization and a set of beliefs which told you what to believe. You couldn't use your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind directly. You had to believe what you were being told. And you couldn't discover karma for yourself. You had to believe what was in the books and what was being told by the priest, etc. Not just in Catholicism and later on Protestantism, in any monotheistic religion, in all the three of them, which you saw displayed by the three founders, okay? They are just simple religious facts. It's as clear as that. So without any judgment, we can observe that the notion of cause and effect, karma, how the world really operates and how human beings operate here started to disappear, and with him, about 1,000 years later, started to reappear. But then it wasn't called karma, it was called science. And science has one key point, a key tool, an asset which they use to train the mind and get to new and new discoveries, whether it's math, physics, etc. It's called the equation. So the way we work with an equation is the diametric opposite compared to the Chong An. Because in the equation, you have to have a lot of thinking, and clear thinking only, whether it's math, physics, or later on biology, chemistry, etc., to have an equation or a formula. Because in chemistry, you have a formula. And in math, you have both. You have formulas, equations, and other mental creations. They are only thinking. They are only logic. Although you need intuition to solve them, mostly it's thinking. Here, you have very little thinking, completely intuitive. Okay? Most Chong Ans have no thinking at all. Some of them have a little cognitive element, and some of them have none. Here, with the equations and the formulas, some of them have a little intuitive element, but mostly not. You have to learn really like a computer, and sorry for all those folks who are really racking their brains to work things out. You have to learn your trade. You have to learn how to be a good mathematician, physicist, chemist, biologist, etc. And you work with formulas and equations. And that's pure thinking. And that's no thinking. Okay? Now the world has become a global village. Now we are really together. There are flights, fiber optics cables, many means of transportation, communication, and trade to really bind us together. And clearing out this one too, and just leaving the equation and the formula part up, I would like to demonstrate how we can use whatever karma we've got. And some of you are probably already guessing what I'm going to draw here. But I'm drawing, for me, the inevitable, the combination of the two. It's impossible that in the future we would survive without an intuitive, compassionate, wise, etc. mind, as well as without the left hemisphere's highly developed intelligent cognition, which creates all our technology. So if we lose, now in a polarized way, the human, the internal side, or we lose the technological, the external aspect, our life quality will be decreased. We will lose. We will suffer. So, what is there to do? Combine them like this. Fairly simple. We have approached this and we have reached this many times before, but now you can see it in an Eastern and Western setting, starting with the East, lining up Lao Tzu, Buddha, Confucius, and then the rest of it. And then here, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and then the rest of us, okay? Creating a way, creating a belief system, working with karma, working with science, being rather an internal path and being rather an external path. And the greatest event of the 20th century is that we have to combine them. It's impossible to deny either one of them. It's impossible to make judgments between them because we would create suffering right away. So our job in the 20th and the 21st century and onwards is to create a synthesis, a harmony, and a universal wisdom with a lot of good qualities internally and externally to comprise and include and accept all of them. If we cannot do this, human society cannot proceed in the way we have proceeded, because a few of us would be left out. And those who would be left out, they would be very upset. Okay? And that's why if you see kongans in this context, they stop being so mysterious, they stop being so impractical. You have to train your intuition, your before-thinking mind, so that your original intuitive wisdom and compassion could open. Because when you practice with kongans, you have to attain don't know. If you don't attain this don't know mind, you cannot solve the kongan. Okay? So here is not moving body, not moving speech, not moving mind. Here the mind moves, and it moves on a preordained path. On a path where at the end x equals whatever, 0, 1 or y. Okay? So this is a really important point, to see kongans in its proper context, what it can do and how we can use it. That's why the whole, system, that's why the whole framework, so that you could see the value of your own culture. Because it is not separate from anything else. It is not just monks and nuns, prerogative or privilege to use kongans. We can do that too. And just as not to kind of go without a real kongan, let us just say one, which is kind of pretty easy, but also requires intuition and not thinking. Songam, Zen master, used to call himself and answer himself. Master, master, yes, yes. Keep clear, yes, yes. Don't be deceived by anybody, any place, any time. Yes, yes. Two minds, but one master. Which one is the correct master? You start to think like an equation, you will never solve it. Because then correct master equals this or that. Then Zen master hits you. If you stop working on it as if it was an equation, you return to don't know, a totally different answer appears. Okay? It's a very, very interesting point. Or, a very high class one, the mouse eats cat food, but the cat's bowl is broken. What does that mean? Now, this is something which even advanced practitioners work months, if not years. Because this is like calculus in math. Very concise, very short, very demanding. And if your mind is not strong and clear enough, it will break into thinking. And you start to think about it instead of reflecting it. All right? Here with science, intuition is also a key point, but a smaller point. Not as big as with, Kongan practice. This little intuition gave us many discoveries. And it's really important to see them. Okay? Like, they come in metaphors. Like if you know Schrödinger's cat, okay? Schrödinger's cat is the foundation of quantum physics. It was in 1935, and if you really know what this is about, you understand a little bit of don't know. So Schrödinger's cat goes like this. It's almost like a kongan. There is a box into which you cannot see. And in that box there is a cat. And in the same box there is a little small bottle filled with poison. This poison can come out at any time, randomly. So if you're just looking from the outside, you don't know whether the cat is alive or dead before you open the box. So that's how the indeterminacy of quantum states was actually explained. It's pure don't know, actually. There are other instances of don't know in physics. If you talk about Heisenberg and the Heisenberg indeterminacy, sometimes we have an electron, and you either know the speed or the location. You cannot know both. But it's not as clear as Schrödinger's cat. Okay? There was also another individual, and I promise this is the last scientific story I'll tell you. His name was Riemann, and very few people know him. He was a mathematician. And this mathematician is really kind of a strong person, a non-judgmental person, because there are the parallel lines which we work with when we are at school and when we make a railway or anything. We have these really parallel lines here. And in math, as well as in, of course, geometry, there's a theoretical question whether these parallels meet in the infinite or not. So if you make them very, very, very long, the question is, because as far as the eye can see, sometimes the parallels meet in the infinite or not. Is there a kind of meeting between them? Or there is no meeting between them? There's a big question. And some geometry says that they meet. Some geometry says that they do not meet. And based on that, they build up various kinds of understanding of our three dimensions. Now, Mr. Riemann was different. He said that we don't know. He said we don't know. And we don't want to define something which we don't know. Same as this guy. Okay? So we don't want to define which one is the true master because we don't know. That's the start. And after that there's an answer, but of course you have to find that all by yourself. So we don't know. So Riemann used this don't know to build up a geometry which is super, hyper super, because it's not determined by meeting or not meeting infinite, by right or wrong, yes or no. So he left out one duality, which is usually dividing geometries into this or that. He didn't do that. So these are kind of interesting examples how we use intuition and cognition together with each other. Okay? Like I give you a kongan where you have to think actually and you have to know a little culture to solve it. This kongan is from a long time ago in China where Duxan Zen master was carrying his bowls. And the housemaster stops him, Sol Bong, and says, "Great master, the bell has not yet been rung. The drum has not yet been struck. Where are you going carrying your bowls?" Then Duxan, just without saying a word, turned back, returned to his room. And Sol Bong, the housemaster, talks to Amdu. "The great master doesn't understand the last word." Then Duxan heard about it and called Amdu. Actually, Amdu said, "The great master doesn't understand the last word." Called Amdu and said, "Do you not approve of me?" Then Amdu whispered something into the master's ear. Then Duxan was greatly relieved. And next day, from the high rostrum, before Duxan was beginning the speech, Amdu, the head monk, jumped up, clapped his hand, and says, "Oh, wonderful! The great master has understood the last word. From now on, no one can check him." Now, this is really from Chinese monastic culture. You have to understand what is the last word. You have to know what's going on in a temple, basically, how the forms work, etc. So if you don't have that little cognition, then your intuition can work for 1,000 years. It still doesn't find the answer. So that's why I'm saying we have to really combine one excess and the other excess, the two extremes, and then use them in our everyday lives. Okay? And then, of course, there are many questions. First of all, what was the last word? Or what did Amdu whisper into the master's ear? Okay? And how was Duxan's speech different from before? Or if you were Duxan and the housemaster stops you, what would you have said to him to avoid all that trouble? Now you find these kongans in our kongan books, in the Ten Gates or the Howard Singer Flower kongan books, and a lot more. They are like these equations or formulas. Now, I was never good at math, so I had to try the kongans. So really, truly, I liked what I was being taught at school, but I stopped short at math. It just didn't work. My brain was just not having the right circuitry. But kongans soon, actually, a couple of years, then you get the hang of it, then it has a taste which is really good. Then your mind is very happy because you went one level deeper, 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 deeper. And of course, scientists are happy. I mean, if you're good at this, you get Nobel Prize. Okay? If you're good at this, then you get pain in your knees. Okay. More questions?
I did not know about the Heisenberg's theory.
No problem. Me also, not so much. So.
His theory will be known as the probability. That there is if you seek for the existence of light, for example, the light, then it exists in the position and moving different. It exists as a probability. We find it.
Actually, if we want to make this clear, I think it's independent of Heisenberg, and is the nature of light, which can be a particle and a wave. And human beings either see light as a particle or as a wave, but not both together. Yeah. So, what's the question, Kyosunin?
The Western scientists, they analyze the phenomena, and they found the formula. The formula, and it's very useful to develop the human culture.
Is this what you're thinking about? Okay. That was a turning point in human history as well as consciousness. Einstein was very interesting because, first of all, he says, God doesn't play dice. That was the answer to Schrödinger's cat. He didn't believe in improbability. He said, somehow the quantum states are decided, and it's not by the improbability relegated by God, so God doesn't play dice, because that was always the first time, or the first kind of way to demonstrate quantum physics. You know, we play dice, and there's a statistical average, and then it goes this way or that way. When he found this, it's just as important as form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It's exactly the same, but in the Western way. Einstein found the relativity of time and space. The Orient found the relativity of all mental phenomena. Remember all the Zen principles and the Mahayana teaching that we went through? We found out that all our karma is relative. It's impermanent, subject to causes and conditions, and it has no independent existence. We have been living with that wisdom for a long time, in the Orient, of course. But when he did this, and he found the general and the special theory of relativity, all of which have been proven absolutely true, because what was the work of later physicists like Friedman? They went through the whole thing all over again, to the very last equation, to the very last dot. It's perfect. So Einstein had a very, very deep intuition, nothing short of an enlightened physicist. Okay? So that's how the whole thing worked. And I appreciate you brought up the kind of particle and wave nature of light, because it's another big kongan. So which one is it? I mean, turn on the switch, you know, you see. But the cognition cannot decide whether it's a particle or a photon, because it's actually both. And sometimes it's neither, but that can come later. Okay. Thank you very much.